Hey friend, Colin here from Sumthins Recording, and today I'm going to show you how to mix electric guitar in 2 steps. We're going to be mixing electric guitar today using just EQ and compression. And these 2 steps, these 2 tools are going to help you make sure you can sit all of your electric guitar tracks inside your mix without them getting harsh or edgy for the listener. Before we dive in though, if you're ready to go a little bit deeper into the mixing process in its entirety and really start to hone your workflow as an audio engineer, then I have just the thing for you. It is my 7-step mixing checklist, and it's just a simple PDF guide that will walk you through the entire mixing process step by step to help you get professional and radio-ready mixes without any more of the guesswork. It is a completely free guide, and you can download it below using the link in the video description. Now let's jump in here and take a look at these electric guitars. Let me start, of course, by playing you these inside the mix. We've got 5 electric guitars here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 electric guitars. Yes, I can count, I promise. 5 electric guitars here. And I'm going to play you the finished mix here. You can hear how they sit inside the mix. And then I'll solo the group up for you as well. So take a listen. Here's our finished mix for this song.
Sit down. Take a look at yourself. Don't you want to be somebody? Someday somebody's gonna see inside. You have to face up. You can't run and hide. Have you heard about the
You can hear all of our guitars have that nice brightness, they have that nice shine to them, they're not lacking any weight, and they're not edgy, and they are not harsh overall. I'm going to loop just this chorus section here, and we're going to go through each of these guitars. Actually, for the first part, we'll loop this verse section so we can see these 2 guitars going a little bit longer here. We're going to take a look at our first guitar to start here. First move we're going to do on each of them, our first step is EQ. So I'm going to open all these up actually, and we're going to nuke the compressor on all of them. We're just going to look at our first, EQ. So here's our first guitar, and I'll take off all our processing. You can hear the raw guitar by itself. So this first guitar here, our first step on all of our guitars is our EQ. And the first thing I'm doing with EQ on any track I pull it in on is rolling in the high pass filter here. We've got quite a bit of low mid energy here that we don't need, that's not contributing any character or vibe to this track. So I'm gonna roll the high pass filter all the way up to about 286 hertz here. Take a listen to what this does. Take a listen to how it cleans up our guitar. Very, very nice. We've gotten rid of all of that energy in the low end and the low mids that was making this guitar feel muddy and feel a little bit too heavy overall. The next move I'm always making on electric guitar is I'm usually rolling in a low pass filter. The only time I'm not rolling in a low pass filter on electric guitar is if it's a lead guitar. I like to leave that extended top end on lead guitars, but for rhythm guitars and crunchier guitars, anything that's not a lead inside the track, I like to roll in the high pass filter because anything above about 6 or 7K is usually where you're getting that harshness and that edginess. So we want to make sure we're not driving off any listeners with harsh electric guitars here. So I'm going to roll in the high pass filter, the low pass filter to about 8K here, 7.93K. Take a listen to how this kind of just tames and rounds out the top end. It's not making a huge difference. It's just subtly taming that top end, subtly taming that extra sizzle we have up on the top end. It's also going to help us out here because the next move we're doing is I'm boosting some of this 5K area. Like I just said, this 5, 6, 7K area, that's where that harshness is, and that's where you can get into kind of the pain area on electric guitar. But we need to add some brightness here. So having this low pass filter in helps us make sure as we boost top end here, it's not going to be too much for the listener. So we're going to do about 4 dB at 5K here and add some brightness to this guitar. Very nice. Gives our guitar some shine, gives it a little brightness, and emphasizes the articulation on it as well. Let's move over. Here's our next electric guitar, and you can see we're doing something pretty similar here. We've got our 2 filters, we've got 1 boost. First thing we're doing here on this second guitar, of course, rolling in the high pass filter. We've got a little lower on this guitar. I'm only at about 200 hertz here. Usually where I'm sitting on electric guitar is anywhere between about 150 and 200, just rolling it up to make sure we're only emphasizing the heart of this sound. So take a listen without the high pass, and then I'll kick it in. Very reminiscent of Eye of the Tiger there. We're rolling off some of the bottom end that you may think is crucial to this guitar part, but in reality, all this stuff down by 110, 115 is actually just fighting with our bass guitar. So by rolling off that low end area, that 100 hertz area, we emphasize more of this 200 hertz area, which is the bottom end of the way we want on our electric guitar. Not this 100 hertz area. That's going to fight with our bass guitar. So we're cleaning up our bottom end and focusing it on the fundamental of the actual electric guitar and not of the bass guitar here. Next thing we're doing here, same kind of move we made on our last electric guitar, rolling in the low pass filter to make sure we don't have any of that harshness up on the top end here. Same thing around 9K. Take a listen. Not making a huge impact, just rolling off a little bit of that noise, and again, giving us that extra level of protection up on the top end. Now, we didn't need any brightness up on the top end on this guitar. I needed some mids to make sure this was going to cut through and to give some extra articulation in the high mids here to that kind of picking sound that he's doing here. So we're at 2.22K, so almost 2.5K, and we're doing a 3 dB boost here. I've narrowed the Q a little bit so we don't reach too much up into the high end here. I don't want to add any harshness. I don't want to add any pokiness. I just want to add some articulation and some cut to this guitar in the mid-range. Just gives that guitar that extra boost of energy so we know it's going to cut through in the mix here. I'm clicking the wrong buttons as I'm trying to unsolo stuff. Moving on to our next guitar here, we have our other rhythm guitar panned back to the left. Pretty similar moves here. We're kind of moving lower and lower with all of our moves here. Same first move though is our high pass filter. I've got it a little bit lower, so moving down a little bit at a time here. We're only rolling it up to about 180 hertz here, but still cleaning up that bottom end and making sure none of these electric guitars are going to fight with our low end elements, so our bass guitar and our kick drum here. So take a listen without it and then with it. You can hear how using the high pass filter, we're focusing in on the heart of this sound, which is above 200 hertz here. Everything below 200 hertz is really just adding extra low end weight that we don't need for this electric guitar. It's just going to end up fighting with our bass guitar and our kick drum and blurring our bottom end. We want to focus on the mid range here. That's what we're selling on electric guitar. Same thing that we've been doing, rolling in that low pass filter here, just slightly lower, still around 9K, rolling off a little bit of that extra sizzle and giving us that level of protection on the top end. Making a little bit bigger of a difference here, a bit bigger of an impact on this guitar. We're still at about 9K, but you can hear there's some extra energy going on above the 5K area, and having that low pass in there, again, gives us that level of protection and just smooths out the top end overall. Think about it like pulling in the high pass filter to roll off the sibilance range on a vocal. We're pulling in the low pass filter here to roll off that extra sizzle and air on the top end that we don't need on electric guitar. We're a little bit lower here. I'm emphasizing more of the mid-range on this guitar. Anything that's more rhythmic and strumming, I want to emphasize that mid-range. Again, mid-range is what you're selling on electric guitar. So doing almost a 4 dB boost at 1.5K. Take a listen to what this does for our tone. A little bit of mid-range on an electric guitar goes a long way to helping it feel more full and less scooped sounding, especially a cleaner sounding electric guitar. If you don't have that mid-range in there, it can feel very scooped sounding with just the bottom end and the top end. We're doing a little bit more work on this last guitar here. We've got quite a bit more boosts and cuts, but still starting with our filters. I'm going to do both of these at the same time this time. So we're only rolling up to about 182 hertz here, and then rolling our low pass into about 8.8K. So still we're sitting around 9K there, rolling off that extra sizzle. Take a listen to what our filters do to hone in on the fundamental frequency range, the heart of this electric guitar tone. Making sure it's not too heavy and making sure it's not too sizzly up on the top end. Now, there was some extra weight here in the low mids, and sometimes you'll have to pull out around this 300 hertz area on electric guitar. I didn't have to on the other ones. If your guitar player is really dialed in with their tone, a lot of times you don't have to mess too much with it. You just pull in those filters, maybe a little brightness, maybe a little bit of mid-range, and you're good to go. This one was just a little heavier than the other ones, so pulling out about a dB at 300 helps to clean up the tone a little bit. Take a listen. Evens out our frequency range a little bit here. Now, we are adding some brightness, and then we're adding some cut here in the mid-range as well. So let's add this brightness first. It's about a 6 dB boost at 4.5K. The guitar is a little dark sounding, and I want to make sure it's going to compete with the rest of the stuff we have going on. We got a lot of background vocals, and we've already put in a lot of guitars here, so we need to make sure we can hear this one. So 5, almost 6 dB at 4.5K. I threw in that mid-range boost there as well, about 2.5 dB at 1.44K. That's giving us that fullness. Our top end boost there around 4.5K gives us a ton of brightness and wakes up the guitar sound overall. So that's step one when we're mixing electric guitar. I gave you 4 examples there. We mixed 4 different electric guitars, or EQ'd 4 different electric guitars. Step one is pulling in our EQ. Step number 2 is compression. Now, compression is very easy on electric guitars, at least for me, because I like to use this Everest C100A compressor. If you don't have this, pulling in the stock compressor is going to be just fine. Medium attack, faster style release. We want to be a little bit more gentle. There's not a fast transient we need to grab on any of these guitars. So you can see as I kind of scroll through here, we've got the same settings on each of these electric guitars. Medium attack, faster style release. I'm going to click all of these in together because we're doing the same thing on all of them. Just shooting for about 3 dB reduction on all of these electric guitars. I'll throw them all in together. We'll go back out to stereo as well. Now, compressing an electric guitar isn't so much about evening out the volume, because if we look at these electric guitars, if we zoom out here, you can see they're not very dynamic, especially the later ones here that have a little bit more crunch and distortion on them. They're pretty even to begin with, and they generally sit where they're supposed to volume-wise. These first two fluctuate a little bit in volume because they're a little bit cleaner, but pulling in the compressor is not so much about controlling the dynamic range as it is about concreting in all of the moves that have been made prior. So that's the tone on the electric guitar and the EQ we've done to clean up this electric guitar. Pulling in just 3 dB reduction on a compressor helps to even out and concrete everything we've done so far. And it just solidifies the sound of electric guitars, and we can park it exactly where we need to inside the track. If it's a little bit cleaner and it moves around a little bit, you can push that dynamic range a little bit and compress it a little bit more so it sits evenly inside the track. But the more distortion you have on it, the more even it's going to be to start with, and it's more about shaping the tone on the guitar and kind of solidifying the EQ moves we've already made, rather than compressing the dynamic range here or shortening the dynamic range. That's one of the reasons I love this Everest C100A, because it's not very fast. Even on the fast setting, it's not a very fast compressor, and it doesn't do a lot to clamp down on the dynamic range, but just doing that 3 dB reduction on an electric guitar solidifies all of the moves that have been made previously, even at like the preamp stage on the electric guitar. It just concretes in all the EQ moves we have made on these electric guitars. So take a listen one more time and focus on how the tone changes, not the volume change on the electric guitar. Our volume doesn't change too much, but we click these compressors in and suddenly our guitars feel just a touch thicker and they feel just that touch smoother on the top end. It concretes in, solidifies all these EQ moves we have made on our guitars to get them sitting where we want them. Let's throw them back inside the track here, and I'll A/B our EQ and our compressor on these electric guitars. Two steps for mixing electric guitar. Step number one is pulling in our EQ, using our filters to hone in on the heart of our electric guitar, maybe adding some brightness, making sure we're not adding any harshness, adding any weight or mid-range fullness if we need to. And then step number two is pulling in our compression, not so much to focus on clamping down on the dynamic range, but to concrete in the tone and the EQ moves we have already made. I hope that was helpful for you. As I mentioned at the beginning of the video, if you're ready to go a little bit deeper into the mixing process and really start leveling up your tracks, then I have just the tool for you, and it is completely free. It is my 7-step mixing checklist, and you can download it below to start creating more professional mixes in less time. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.